Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Board with Fins, episode 2. We've done it. We've done it, guys. Catchphrase, catchphrase, catchphrase. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Tom, but luckily it's not just me, because I've recruited the greatest board gaming minds that I could find free on a Tuesday evening in central Helsinki. But I don't want to undersell them, because they're just that good and available. I'm joined by Simon and Ita. Hi guys, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing good.
Hi there, yes. I am indeed Simon and free on a Tuesday evening, and that is why I'm here.
I feel like selling me as my availability being one of my better qualities seems a bit
It's been that kind of year.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's availability for sword fighting, then absolutely.
This is bad.
If you turn up to anything, 9 out of 10 person, I would say. In my book, it's like, congratulations, you've made it. You're up there.
Yeah.
The upper echelons of friendship. You've left your house.
This is entirely fair, especially in Finland.
I mean...
It's, well, yes. And now I will rant. Well, no, I won't, because I'm finished. I will just... Or am I?
All right. Oh.
The mystery continues into episode 2. Mm-hmm. It's not just a meme.
So, how are you guys doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm having an absolute nightmare week at work, but I'm holding it together through, I assume, purely caffeine.
And
purely
spite.
caffeine. Caffeine and spite. And also Christmas cheer. Not to give the game away when we're recording this.
I've been listening to non-stop Christmas songs for this week at work, just because I'm trying to I'm just forcing cheer into the lab and into my life while I finish the final things I have to do before Christmas. But they're actually going quite all right. I'm having a pretty good week, all things considering.
Good stuff. Well, you're probably wondering what the theme of this week is. And I'll tell you, it's the Spaceline special. And then something clever about RPG prepping that I didn't put into the title, because I think we thought of it too late. But anyway, we're going to be tackling an absolute beast of a game. Well, a couple of games, actually, to do with majestic space operas. We're going to be talking about Twilight Imperium, 3rd edition and 4th edition. And then, sorry.
No, I was going to say, just in case anyone was wondering what TI was because in last episode, we talked about TI quite a few times without ever actually expanding the acronym.
That's also, we also didn't use proper game titles for most of the episode as well. It was an absolute harrowing experience to edit that. A lot of mistakes there for across the board. Thank God we're not on Reddit or anything, like we just get decimated.
Yeah, but also, who the hell makes a podcast first try and gets everything right? It's like, we just...
It should be us.
We showed up talking to each other as we're friends, like the way we usually talk to each other, and that is using, like, not saying Dogs of War or not saying, I played Twilight Imperium 4th edition.
TM.
Yeah. Last weekend, and it was great.
Again, it's a relaxed approach.
Yeah.
Relaxed approach. We're not the Dice Tower. We're not everyone's favorite board game reviewer.
Is the Dice Tower a thing?
Yeah.
Are you joking?
No,
I can't tell
I'm not.
if you're
No,
joking.
it's like a huge YouTube
like
channel.
Tom Vassell.
Yeah,
Literally never heard the name.
Okay, the guy's been
Wow,
reviewing games for like forever.
It's like
It's so big that on some board games, there's like the shut up and sit down recommended stuff on board games. There's also the Dice Tower recommended one is also.
No, I've definitely heard.
They're so big that they have their own little stamp.
I've definitely heard of like shut up and sit down, but I'm clearly like showing my ass as being a complete like.
Because one day my dream, like Martin Luther King had a dream, and
this is gonna go sideways very quickly.
and I have a dream, and that's that some board game will put like a X out of 10 Pubbability.
Nice.
On the side of a thing.
Do it. Yeah, that's definitely on par with racial equality in the United States. I think we
board with
equivalent dreams.
Pubbability. Yeah. And then like 8 out of 10. But I don't know why they would put 8 out of 10. I guess they wouldn't put a rating.
But that's a finished 10 out of 10.
It is true.
You can't go above that, surely.
No, there's no way.
4 out of 5.
4 out of 5, 8 out of 10, 16 out of 20. I can go on.
Please don't.
So, Twilight Imperium.
Yes. Should we talk about this and our various experiences playing the 3rd edition, which is now 1 million years old, and then the 4th edition, which I realized is also 1 million years old now.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's
When did it come
just
out?
5 years old, I think. The 3rd edition came out in 2004, so we would have all been like 11, except for Tom.
Yes, I was 10. I was 10.
You were 10? Well, I was 11, and you were 12?
12?
Something?
Oh, I can't tell. Were you joking, or is that legitimate?
I was actually
Is that
11 in
legitimate maths?
2004.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, dating.
We were all just 11. Mentally, we still are.
Yes.
And then Twilight Imperium 4 came out in 2017, I think.
Because
it's pretty new. I would consider a game that came out in 2017 to be still relatively new.
It is, but in my mind, it's like a lot more hot and fresh than 2017.
Yes, but because we only started playing 4th edition fairly recently.
Again, but it has been
God,
a long time since we've actually played it.
Pre-COVID we started, because the first game was at your old place.
And because I got it as a gift from Mikko after we broke up, so I did Christ.
Well, as we have a moment of real introspection here in the studio, with the passage of time.
What is time?
So, I think the real question is, Tom, when did you buy the 3rd edition?
I got it when I was in Australia, and I got it. I think I got all the expansions secondhand, but I got the actual base game
From a shop.
From a shop. And then had it shipped. It's a beast, yeah. But I've had it for a while. But I've never we played it a handful of times
in Australia.
Yeah, but it seems the Finnish gaming crowd can't get enough. Went a bit crazy with it.
Slightly, yeah.
But before we get into maybe stories and stuff, should we explain what the game is for those uninitiated few?
We will attempt.
I mean, broad strokes.
Yeah.
Right.
The way I explain it when I tell people that I relatively often tell people that I'm sorry I can't make it into a thing because I have scheduled 16 hours of yelling at my friends over a board game.
This is a recurring theme with basically every game we pick up.
But nothing makes us quite as passionate as Twilight Imperium.
I think the 10 hours of drinking also factors in.
Maybe a bit.
A little bit.
And also, when you tried to do something for 12 hours and then you're just about to do it and then someone ruins it.
Yes.
Just you get extra yelling.
But that wouldn't happen
when you try to do
Simon.
something for you, or most of that day was doing this, and then someone goes nope.
But basically, every single player plays a different space race, and all of those races have asymmetrical powers, like we discussed in last episode how much we like those. And you try to win the game by getting points, and get points by scoring objectives, and basically the fighting is completely unnecessary, but it is also
sometimes.
Most of the time, fighting is completely unnecessary, and yet when you look at the game itself, you tend to look at there's quite a lot of ships on this board.
Yeah, so it's interesting because the setup is kind of a hex-based map, and each hex is either planets or empty space, and planets give you resources and votes, so you can build ships, build armies, and fight over planets. It's never a bad thing, to actually expand, fight each other. But what actually wins you the game is usually not that. You have to do other crazy kind of side quests, accumulate certain wealth, or fight over very specific things. And the mechanisms are kind of set up that you can't really snowball too hard. You kind of do need some level of diplomacy. You can't just fight the whole table.
Unless you're left completely alone for a long while to accumulate resources, and then you can just build the biggest fleet in the galaxy and just be like, I have pointed all of my dreadnoughts and my warsons in your direction. Fuck you.
But I think that's a breakdown of diplomacy, because that means that someone has ignored me for 3 hours, pointing at that person, going, look at the ships, look at the ships he's got. Why won't anyone stop him? Which I think is the real loss there, that no one listens to me when I see the end of days approaching.
I do think in this table it is usually Simon who doesn't listen to us when someone is being the major threat, because Simon often sits next to them and is being on their wing.
Listeners, you can't see my face, but I look flabbergasted at these accusations.
You do have honeyed words that you
treason.
Pour into people's ears. We're best friends.
I feel like I'm usually the one that everyone points at.
To tell you to stop the person.
You point and tell me that I'm going to win. Stop me, and I have nothing to.
I think that you are usually in contention.
I get kneecapped in every single game I even try to win.
No, you got kneecapped when you went to Mechatl Rex first round.
That's just one game.
Yes, and that
was a long time ago.
That has been burnt into your brain.
No, that's not what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of every other time I get to 6 points before anyone else, and everyone goes, well, okay, now no one gives Simon anything anymore, and then.
And yet someone will do it.
No, there's games where I'm the first to 6 points and I end my game at 6 points because that's all I could get, because then the table turns on me. That has happened several times. But anyway, we're getting slightly slightly off topic.
We're getting into bitterness.
Yeah.
Stories of bitterness, which I love, but maybe we can come back to it.
Which is the game. But I like TI or Twilight Imperium.
You can call it TI at this point.
Now, now we can be all slangy because we've actually explained it.
Like TI is not an easily approachable game.
God, no.
By any means, because it has everything and it has the most of most things, and it almost like starts off as one game and then develops into a completely different game, because as you said, it starts off as these hexes. Starting off, you're far away from everyone else, and you can just like, the game is just, I'm going to take some planets, I'm going to build some ships that can carry people, put some people on some planets, get resources, build more ships, build more things, get some tech, and then, it's just a nice little resource gathering, like, almost area of control game, until you sort of realize that, I actually need that specific planet that someone else has.
And working out who's actually a threat. Like, because everyone smiles up until the first kind of fight.
Yeah.
Unless you're some people going, I'm definitely going to attack you.
Yeah, and no one really wants to fight, and because it's like a round galaxy, like you have two neighbors to yourself, so like wherever you focus your things, they're gonna have to react to that, and then you're both leaving one flank open to just being like.
Yeah.
Also, something for context in this case, the game can be played by minimum of three
players.
Technically, 4 players is also a bit small. We often play with 6 people, and at the biggest we play with 8.
Yeah, we've had some crazy games.
8 gets a bit cumbersome. And also, I think it's important to note here that we play. Apparently, I've heard from other people that when I talked about TI to other people who also play TI, we play a very different games than some other people. So it is very the mechanics are the same. The social dynamics and the diplomacy and how much the fighting goes on and what kind of fighting it is and how early the fighting happens is super, super table specific. And that's also, I think, partially in our case because we played at one point, I think we played about once a month for
it was pretty crazy.
Almost a year. And then Corona happened and then we had to stop for a very long time. But it's unusual that people would get along, the same core group of people would get together to do it about once a month, 16 hours in a pop.
Was it really that often? Was it?
I think it was.
I think for a run. I don't know if it was for a full year, but definitely
6 months.
I think we are quite a friendly group when we play it as well. I think most people no one really goes in cutthroat and goes.
Yeah, until
but it's so risky to be cutthroat.
Yeah.
Really.
Especially, but I also think we also there's something that came up previous episode as well. Like when I said that betrayal is the last rounds of TI where we figured out who's winning and we try to kneecap that person.
Apparently, not in the last game.
No, I wasn't there.
Not that I'm salty about it, but maybe someone should have been kneecapped. I'm not going to name any names.
I wasn't
there. I'm just going to tell that person.
You guys have played for I think one of the very few games that you've played in Finland that I wasn't in.
I think that's true.
Maybe the only one.
So maybe she is the most available person, and your introduction was indeed spot on.
Nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
Completely accurate.
There's a few games I haven't been in. The first game ever, and then I think there was a game where neither Tom or I was in.
I think whenever I've missed
one time.
Well, I'm usually there for the 3rd edition game because I own it.
Yeah.
And then if I miss a game, it's usually the 4th.
There was one game at my place with 4th edition that neither of you guys were, and what I remember that wasn't a very good game because seeing Tom's vein pop in his forehead is one of the great joys of this game.
Yeah, every game brings me closer to death, taking years off my life, just the hypertension really taking over.
Then also the different space races have very, very different abilities and what they can do. There's they can either affect something about the fighting or they can affect something about the diplomacy or order of play or...
That's kind of true.
Yeah.
But is there then a sweet spot for asymmetry? So each race kind of is more warlike, maybe their ships are more powerful, but then other races are more powerful politically. Other races are more strongly economically focused.
And some are early game races, some are late game races. And
I
do think we've noticed that there are certain races that are very powerful and have often in our games have won. And then there's races that we hate and think are shit. But we're not entirely certain.
There's nothing wrong with the winner. throw myself onto a sword to protect the winner.
They're not fun.
They're just not very good.
What's the best ice cream flavor? Correct. Vanilla.
They're incredibly bland.
Yes.
They're incredibly bland as a race.
To be fair, I would also say that I find Jolnar to be bland. I don't like playing them, but they are the one that has won the most games.
You do?
But I think that's because we're not aggro. Because as soon as someone turns the like that was the real in the last game. Spoilers. That was the Jolnar, and like having a 1 in 10 chance of having your ships hit is a really bad stat.
Yes.
Like it's really bad against the warbugs or anyone.
But I do think the like asymmetry is very good, and I have enjoyed tremendously the fact that I could play the kind of races that fit how I play the game. Every time I try to play an asshole like warlike race, I do really badly because that's not my strength.
You get so close to winning, and I think if you were a little bit more aggro. Like if you really just went for it, because everyone's like, I mean, you are generally quite a trustworthy person, so you like everyone like gives you an inch, you know, every so often, and then there's always a time where I'm like, now Ita, do it, strike them,
and also
strike them when they don't expect it.
I also think that people like, even though I've made it very publicly clear that the fact that I always go like, oh no, I have no chance of winning. Look at how badly I have done all of this is completely an act. And also the fact that and the fact that when
I feel betrayed,
and the fact that like let's do this for the memes, it would be funny, or like
you and the memes.
Yes, it's usually because the memes somehow help me win.
I thought it was for the aesthetic. I think that's why.
Also fair. Yes.
I do remember. I agree with what you saying that you are like you've been closer to winning than maybe you let us see or than you yourself see, because I feel like you would just need to go like the final like gambit of like the last turn, like you just have to go for it, and then you would win the.
I think I get
more games.
I think I get stuck into the especially the last part of TI when someone is more clearly winning, and like we need to work together to win, and then I keep forgetting that it's not actually like a group thing, and like
Galactic Politics. This is for the Empire.
Yes.
You want to be the Emperor race.
When I was playing the Empyrean, like this is TI4, that game, I think, if I had just been a bit more of an asshole, I would have won hands down. I had been left to control all of the galaxy.
I think everyone's friend.
I think I won with the Empyrean when I played them. That's my last win. Maybe.
But like I've only won one game, and that was the first game I ever played.
Yeah, I wasn't in that game.
Yeah. And it was.
So you can't blame me for kingmaking, which is apparently now what I'm known for.
Yeah, apparently, that's just your reputation.
That is news to me.
You live to lift greater people.
The true kingmaker is Ibrahim.
I mean, he's a fun man, but also wins surprisingly
often.
Often, yeah. Ibrahim is the Boris Johnson of Twilight Imperium.
You mean he's a sexy man?
Yeah. That's obvious. But
I've stunned you with my accuracy.
You have, but also that he's the best at sort of just pretending he doesn't know what's going on. He'll just take all cards, put them in a pile, not even look at them, pretend he doesn't know how to read.
Stop pretending.
Ask every single time is like, is this a ship or is this candy? And we're like, that's a ship, put that down. And like that's the level of things he does. And like yet still he wins quite often. And I'm like, no one is this stupid, especially not this man, who is an intelligent man.
Yes. And like socially very like probably the most socially intelligent in our group.
He's incredibly skillful at just winning by pretending he's an absolute moron. And I respect that. But also sometimes it backfires. He just helps someone else win.
He does sometimes just have grudges. And just goes on grudges.
But it used to be when we started playing, it used to be that, oh no, I'm sitting next to Ibrahim because it's a 50-50 chance. He's either going to attack you for no reason at the very beginning. One person on his
will be best friends forever.
Yes, and will get everything, and the other person will get the shit kicked out of them for absolutely zero reason. And
I mean, grudges are one of the like most fun parts of also like playing in a group where like we talked about legacy games last time. But like this is like has its own meta legacy when we play, right?
Definitely, it's like so many layers, and we all know so much about how everyone plays. Like we have like you can say that okay, Mikko is going to have an insane plan that has like 47 steps, and most of them involve doing something completely illogical. Väinö is going to have a like plan since the 2 weeks before we start the game, and he's going to get so close to finishing it, but somehow just like doesn't account for the fact that people are chaotic as fuck at the table.
It's a perfect plan, assuming no one does anything.
I think you're generous in saying he gets close to succeeding at his plan.
He's been very close many times. I think he just like does not account for the fact that the people do.
I think we drew a win.
Yeah,
the game before last game.
This
Hell of a
sounds
catch up.
reasonable. Yeah.
They're all molding together. I remember still going back to grudges. I remember having one game where I think pissed at Ibrahim for the last game, and then for this game we ended up being next to each other, and all we did was just attack each other for the whole game. Like he was, I think, one of the new races, and I was the T-Rex new race that just eats someone's ships.
Yeah, but
and then I just went, okay, cool, because I'll just in a 1v1 fight, I'll just ruin our both.
The fucking dinosaur race is my.
And then I think in that game, whoever was on my other side won because I had no intention of stopping them. I just wanted to ruin his whole existence.
So yeah, we've kind of bounced around then the TI3 and then some games we've played of TI4. So TI4 was the updated edition. Apparently the cleaned up, the streamlined, the better game. What do we think of in sort of general terms playing TI3, playing TI4? Is there something that in TI4 really struck you as a huge improvement, or is it just kind of
the tech tree?
Is it better?
I'd actually know that I say it. No, it probably isn't better.
I mean, it's miles better. It's so much better.
I don't know.
I kind of enjoyed jank.
I do enjoy jank. You're not wrong.
Yeah,
it's a lot more streamlined, and it's good that you can see what your
and
text
also
do.
It's just that it's jank. Like jank is, I enjoy jank a lot in any game. Like, but jank that doesn't like do anything for you, just doesn't. I don't know. That level of jank is just unnecessary jank.
I think it also comes to the thing we were talking about again. I keep doing throwbacks to the last episode. I will stop. About how we don't like games that are about optimizing your engine or like about playing on your sheet instead of like playing the social game.
Yeah.
And the reason I think Jolnar keeps winning is because the Jolnar player's thing is just to deal with the tech tree. And like the one time Mikko won with playing Jolnar, he was literally just behind his iPad with a tech tree in front of him and just optimizing what he was doing with that. And I think that does take away from the social aspect of it, because if I'm focusing on to the diplomacy and the expansion and the social game, I will always take a forever figuring out what the fuck is the tech I'm taking, or I will just pick something. If I'm focusing on the tech tree, I am focusing on my sheet and on my game, and I'm not looking at what other people are doing.
So is your argument then you want something so obtuse that you can't work it out?
No, I'm just now saying that I think it's better, like, even though I love the jank of the tech tree, and I think maybe the perfect option would be something between TI3 and TI4, I do think it makes it a more, it makes the social aspect of the game better just by not being something you need to go super deep into and think 3 turns ahead. I
don't know. I don't maybe completely agree with that. I don't think, like, regardless of what the tech tree looks like, I don't think that I look and focus on it a lot. I'm looking at tech just to get tech. I usually get tech because I need, like, you need a ship to move more. You need this ship to have ground troops on it or something like that. That's more of a reason to get tech. Or just for points, you need several different colors of tech. You just get any tech in that way. What I like about the best thing about the upgrade is that you can see unit upgrades, which makes it a hell of a lot easier for everyone to know what their ships hit on, especially after 12 hours.
Fair.
Which is just great. The unit upgrades are a separate thing. You put them on your table, on your board, and you're like, oh, these are now better, and these look cool. And then the other techs are just cleaner as to why they lead to each other. Well, that is just an absolute jungle in TI3, and it doesn't improve the game. It makes it worse in every way.
Okay, here's my counterpoint to that sort of cleanliness and more restricted tech tree. Then, are you worried that in TI4, when you are a certain race, then there are preset techs that you should go for? Like, your game isn't then choosing from this delicious tree of jank, which sometimes may be applicable and sometimes not, but there is a right tech to buy at every stage of the game, and if you don't, then you're just kind of hurting yourself.
That's an interesting, maybe a little bit. I guess the biggest change is also that the prerequisite system in 4 is just that, like, they've 4 different colors of text and they're all just prerequisites to each other's. whilst in 3 there's just like a yellow and a green can be a prerequisite for a red or something like that. Like
that is true. Yeah, but that is true in
almost.
TI4 for the unit upgrades as well.
Yeah, but
you need mixed text.
but I
true,
do
that's
think
true.
that I do think that
So
doing the prerequisites being from different trees makes it more interesting. So I'm now waffling between the two options because
I think also in TI3 there are certain like factions that would like certain texts are just good that everyone will get, and certain factions want
Need
to
to have
upgrade
that, yeah.
certain things. I think that's true for 3 and 4. I think it's a little bit more obvious in 4. I think the meta in the world, everyone, you can, like when you Google a race, they go like, oh, do you go red skip Sardak Nor and then green whatever something else. I think there's more like these sort of classification of how you're supposed to play it. But you don't have to do it like that, I don't think, and I feel like you rarely end up doing it anyway.
especially in our games, I think this is again something that is very particular about our games, in that I think people are more likely to play their characters. Everyone is playing to win, obviously, but at the same time we're also playing very janky things, and we're doing things that are like, and because everyone is playing suboptimally, because everyone is drunk from at least the 4th hour, like
just turn 1. Go on then.
because we start playing at noon, and then we're like, maybe first space here we're like sober, and then we start drinking.
Noon.
Yeah, I think that's that's air quote noon.
Yeah, we aim for noon.
Air code noon means 3 p.m.
Yeah.
Yes,
maybe,
because
yeah.
like at noon we start setting up the game, and then at 1 p.m. the last people rock up, and then we need to build the galaxy, and then we need to, if we're doing like race drafting, because sometimes we pick races the day off and then it's a mess, or sometimes we pick them even a week ahead so people can plan. But yeah.
Last time we played, Tom set up the galaxy beforehand, and I'm very much in favor of doing that
We
in
should
the
just
future,
do
because
that.
I don't really care about building a galaxy.
takes
I
an-
can't. Yeah, it takes a long time, and I can't.
And
give
people
a-
are salty about it.
I
and
can't
yeah.
give 2 shits about where I put planets, but I don't even know where anyone's going to be. It's such
But then-
thinking about.
I will say
whatever.
every time we've played TI3, it's been very homebrewy. Like, because there's 2 full expansions, we use some expansion things, some not. So I've never ever played the base game of TI3. Even when that's the only one I owned, I changed the strategy cards. The strategy cards are just a way of getting a particular action that you can do on your turn that no one else can. And I swapped those out for an expansion one. Like I printed them off and taped them on,
Okay.
just because the original ones were mixed response. 1 card that you can pick up just gives you 2 victory points,
Shit.
and the game is to 10. And then there's a card that automatically means that next round, you get to pick the strategy card. So the first 2 strategy cards are always going to be the 2 victory point one, and then the strategy card that gets you 2 victory points next turn.
Yeah.
Which means in a 6-player game, not everyone
We'll
can
ever have it.
can have a chance to do it.
Yeah.
I mean,
This is something also like I've liked that, and I've liked the fact that we've had these conversations. Like we've had like games where we talk about, should we use trade from the previous version or the old like new version, or warfare.
Yeah, I mean, we have tested a lot of weird stuff in
Yeah.
TI3. Some very hit and miss. I think this is going into the minutia, but like the do you remember like the mercenaries?
Yes.
Playing with those, and then the representatives to like
that
vote.
did just not work for us.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know many people that actually use those. Like,
I think,
fully.
yeah, in that way, considering that we play TI3 with such a homebrew set and we've tried different strategy cards, it's remarkably similar to TI4.
I think I've tried
Of the
to
strategy
keep it,
cards we
yeah.
have is like we're
Yeah,
doing remarkably similar to one we ended up choosing is the one that are also in TI4
Which
that
would
they're
be-
doing.
That is true.
Which I think is a like endorsement of how TI4 was. Like it was clearly made by people who actually have played the game a lot or played in a similar way
I
to
mean,
us.
yeah. I mean, play testing.
But then they added some very weird things. Like how do you guys feel about the exploration mechanic?
Well, this is
Yeah,
interesting. 'Cause This
okay.
goes into like TI4 expansion things.
Yeah.
Oh, right, because
so
it's an
I was-
expansion. Yeah.
That's an expansion thing. So,
So-
I think
Yeah, so the expansions we've played with, I guess, more picked and chosen expansion elements in TI3. And the issue people had was, well, what's the best way to use these? Like, which ones should we use? Because when you release an expansion, sometimes people just want more stuff. You just shuffle in, and then everything integrates. And then all the expansions, pretty much for TI3, you can pick and choose. And there's a lot we don't put in, because my God, the bookkeeping that it would take
Yes.
to do everything. Like if we had space mines and shock troops and leaders and political representatives and like it's like you couldn't
It's
move.
already so much like and bringing like we've brought new people into the game as well, which is always like you give them the 30 minutes like TI3 in 30 minutes or TI4 in 30 minutes. Who's is that?
Yeah.
Which channels is that?
RTFM or
Yeah.
RFTM?
RTFM, read the fucking manual. That's what it's.
Is that
yeah,
okay?
Yeah, RTFM's like 30 minutes, like TI in 30
Yeah.
minutes, which is an excellent thing to brief people on. It means that it only takes us an hour and a half to get them up to speed afterwards.
Yeah, it's one of those games where there's so many moving parts, but everything
Makes sense.
it makes sense. Like the rules for each thing are quite simple. There's just a lot of things.
Yes.
Is kind of the
And the interactions
main
are
point.
fairly like there aren't that many interactions. There like it's janky, but things don't really interact that much. You can just like they all are very separate systems in many ways. Except in TI4 and the exploration mechanic does tie into a lot of things.
Yeah, and I guess this is then the crux, right? So we've played base TI4, which did have a lot of elements of TI3 with the expansions already in the base box. So it had all the races, like flagships and things like that's already in there. Not in base TI4. That was Prophecy of Kings as well.
Is Mechs Prophecy of Kings?
We mostly
Really?
mostly played Prophecy of Kings.
I would
I think we
I
only-
would have sworn.
So all
that's
your,
from
your
TI.
agents, your hero,
Yeah.
all that mech, that's all.
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah.
all
yeah.
that- all the
Agents and
exploration
Heroes, I
stuff.
remember. Yeah.
Maybe
and-
we should
and,
play base TI4 again.
It's you brought this up
I
in the
brought
chat.
this up in the chat, but
But-
also you have isn't the
I have a base TI4 completely
because
untouched.
the one we put Ibrahim bought the expansion and then
Yeah.
did he also buy TI4 or did someone else because we shuffled the expansion into someone else's TI4
It's Mikko's TI4.
yeah
and
and
then-
Ibrahim's expansion
Yes, or the other way around.
so you have an unsullied TI4
Yes.
where we could play the base game because that's something I've been
Yeah.
trying to get in the chat people getting on board with that because at least my mind has changed after playing TI4 with the expansion so many times after I was very, very excited about it coming out being like, oh cool, this is this cool mechanic of like not pick and choose everything. You have to play with either everything or nothing. You have to play with all the races have to be in all the exploration, all the everything because
Everything
some
refers to
races only
everything
use
else.
mechs and they're the
Yeah.
super thing. Some
Yeah,
races do exploration and if you play without that race is useless. But it's just I don't know, it's been just too much and it's weird to say that the TI has become too much because it's a game that already is too much from the start and many people would already consider it way too much of a game. So how can
Yes.
you have too much
But I
of
think
a game that's already too much?
I think TI3 is charmingly jank. Like it is like the way and the fact that we've set it up as a game for ourselves, like picking and choosing.
I think this is it does come down to the streamlining and the homebrewing. Just as you
TI4
say.
games are quicker.
Are they though?
Yes,
I
but because
think-
I think people get like I think this is now I don't know if people will agree with me, and especially not about you guys, but like if the people we play TI with would agree with me on this. But I think TI4 is quicker because we stopped caring earlier.
We just give up on life.
A
at some
bit,
point.
yeah. Because I think like
For me, yes, I think there's more. Is there
More
more
to it.
points available? I guess you have you can get 3 points with secret objectives. Everything's
Can
a
you?
bit
Is that
quicker.
3 points?
You can have up to 3 secret objectives, and they're
Oh
1 point each.
yeah, that's how that
So there's
works.
points in your hand that you can get. I think this is something we've homebrewed back into TI3 that you have more objectives flipped at the start.
Yeah.
So this is something I've basically retconned back into TI3 because I like it.
I think makes sense. Yeah.
There's more points on the board, like getting to Mechtal, the victory point, all that sort of stuff.
Which way around is the command token economy? I can't suddenly remember. Like which one is the one that's easier to get
It's
them?
more expensive in
Four.
4, but you can get an infinite amount of them.
Yeah,
and
but
the
I
thing
think-
that there is more overall. There's more resources in 4, so you can also
Just
afford
because of
more.
the exploration as well. Like you
Yeah.
can make a planet a lot stronger, theoretically.
Yeah, no, but like because I think that means that the early rounds of TI4 feel a lot slower and like a lot less is happening because you have the like economy of your actions is so much like slower.
Yeah, it's just I think TI4 with everything, and that's kind of how you have to play it if you have Prophecy of Kings. Like everything goes in. Everything's,
when you say
yeah.
everything, you mean expansion.
The expansion, yeah. Everything from POK. Puck.
Fuck.
As no one calls it. No
No.
one calls it anyway. I get so bogged down to working out what I can do. And that like burns my brain to a crisp to do it. I'm sure if you played it super regularly and like knew everyone's agent, everyone's commander, everyone's hero, everyone's mech, the things that you're buying commanders for, the asymmetry they've really like dialed up to quite a high level. It becomes to me almost unmanageable.
I think the more we talk about this, the more I realize I just don't like the agents and the heroes.
The thing is, right, I like the idea of them, but
in
then actually having
reality-
them, I'm like, wait, what can you do? What nuclear power have you unlocked?
Yeah.
And then if you're allied with someone, you can use my commander.
yeah,
And
I
that's-
just-
could you read that out for me? Also secretly, so no one knows that I'm trying to use your commander.
Yeah, it's like the more we talk about it, the more I'm coming down on the idea of either having more TI3 or trying again with TI4 base game. This is difficult for me to have this opinion because I love Empyrean so much. Empyrean being one of the Prophecy of Kings.
The new races they went hard.
They are really like
the
I
new
like
races
them.
are really fun. But also, what I think TI has always been an asymmetric game, and some races are better than others, but it just gets dialed to 10 in TI4, and Prophecy of Kings just dials it up to 1 million. Like some of the powers are just like the Hakan nuke power is just something that is like unrivaled in how broken it is. Like
Can't remember what it is.
you can build in one action anything you want for free. So you could build 2 wars on your flagship and 1 million other things that you can do flash. So you basically get like 40 resources from nothing, which is just
It's a hell of a swing.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a swing.
But all of them are a hell of a swing, or can be a hell of a swing.
But some of them are
Some of them
fiercely
are
mild.
Yeah.
some of them are quite mild versus that one. And and like with what Tom says, like it's impossible to know what everyone can do at the table.
Especially if you
Whereas
have 8
like
people in the table.
Yeah, with TI3 and maybe base 4, it's at least a little bit like when looking at the board state.
You have
It's
an
like
idea
it's
of what
like,
could
I want to
happen.
do this, but also Tom's over there and he's playing this race. I know he can do this. I know he probably tries to do this, and he has maybe these techs. But when there's too much going on, I look at the board state, be like, all right, I'm gonna try to do this, but there's no point in me planning it because someone's just gonna do something weird that I didn't anticipate anyway. And it's like, oh, you've just teleported everything you have halfway across the map because you can. Cool.
Or you have just switched two tiles around on the
That's
table.
true. Oh, you've landed on my planet. Well, this means that it's also a PDS, and now it's a flagship, and it's a mech.
And also
I
I've
have
nuked
this action
everything.
card. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, oh my god. Yeah, it becomes. I like the idea of like going from TI4 with the expansion and then going back to TI3, where you have a little bit of asymmetry. They kind of nudge you in a particular direction. But I think what I like after a lot of misplays, let's say, like a lot of weird setup things, I think we're at a level where the game is kind of above the table. I'm sitting across from you. Your ship's a +1, and I know you've got that awkward ground force power, right? Like that's kind of it. And if you've got loads of action cards, then who knows what the fuck you can do. There's a lot of action card stuff, but generally, like, no one's there going, hang on, wait, so this piece interacts with this piece, this has an ability that interacts with this. You can do more kind of open diplomacy rather than hoping that people forget what their powers are.
Yeah.
Is pretty much how you win in TI4. It's
This
like,
is true.
you've completely forgotten that you can spawn a flagship there.
That is actually the literal thing, like, because with TI3 it has just enough jank and things are just weird enough and just like asymmetric enough that you can play your race, but you can play it because with TI3 we also played our races more as like the same way we played our houses in King's Dilemma, in that you're kind of
You gotta go for it.
you gotta go for it. But with TI4, there's your race has so many things, everyone else's race has so many things, and the things that you have to remember what your nuke power is. You have to remember what, like, how to set up for it, because otherwise you'll have this whole thing that could swing the whole game, but because of the fact that you've misplayed it, it will not do anything.
It doesn't do anything.
But I want to be clear when we say like in TI4, we mean TI4 with POC.
Yes.
Yeah.
As some people,
Because
as
I think
some
we
people
played
call it.
like
because base TI4 I think is not that different from TI3.
no.
I think it's like it's streamlined a bit. Mostly the big difference is tech tree is different. The strategy cards do different things, but not to a crazy degree. It's pretty much the same game.
It's missing some of the charming jank, but mostly it is the same game.
I have a few bugbears with TI4.
All right, then I'll give you my things of what they actually improved and why I think TI4 base TI4 is better than TI3.
You played
Okay,
like
well-
base TI4. We played like 2 games ever.
Still,
But he did pretty well, so that's why.
Ah.
I liked it.
no, I
That's
did.
why I
Still,
liked
I think
You've
Yeah.
got completely
I
from
I would play TI4 again, and I think we should try the base game again without the expansion. But I
mean,
still think it's better.
I've already been sold on this, but I still want to hear Tom's bugbears.
Okay, the whole like trade good commodity thing, I still don't understand that. I'm a beautiful idiot.
Fair.
If I want to bribe someone, I want to bribe them. I don't want to have my things that then they can turn into their things, and then I also need a ship next to them, and I can only do that once. On our turn, it's like, wow, you're making bribery really, really difficult. You're making any negotiation or diplomacy a real headache to do. And it's like, so out of turn order, I can't convince you to do anything. Yeah, with trade goods. That's something I don't like. Also, the whole refresh commodities into trade good things.
It's such a pain.
Whatever switches you need in your brain to understand that. And I know, like, on paper, it makes sense. You make things you can't do it. But then, like, so I'll just flip these?
I'm having this. I feel like I'm doing first tier tech support every time we have to refresh commodities.
Yeah,
it's just not that complicated.
It
I
really
don't know
is
why.
for
It just isn't. It just isn't. It's
tiny
like,
brain.
It's like you've got some bananas. You can't buy things with bananas, but if you give me bananas, I can give you money for your bananas, and that's it.
Yeah.
But if you have money, you can still just give me money. But then you still have your bananas as bananas and not money.
So why not just have money? Why have a 2-tier economy? What advantage does that give into the game?
Because
space realism.
Because for me, then I hate, like, one of my favorite things that they changed for TI4 for TI3 is the trade. Because I hate trade in TI3. It is cumbersome, and it at most gives you one trade good every 3 turns.
I was happily trading with the Hakan. I was doing gangbusters.
It is practically useless for anyone except for Hakan, which is like
it's just because no one wants to trade with you.
Yeah, you're just a war race, so no one trades with you.
I would expect this to be Tom's opinion about trade, because Tom gets the shit end of the stick on this.
I will hold my hands up. If I'm playing like a warlike race, I will put my trade contracts away, because they're never gonna. No one will in their right mind do it. So I'm like, well, trade is now dead to me. That's it.
Yeah,
I'll just put
exactly.
It away.
Like the whole thing of like, oh, I'll do a contract with you and blah blah blah, instead of being just like, oh, we can just trade some like commodities with whoever you're near. I think that's a much better way of looking at trade.
Yeah, but then you have to trade. Okay, so what about if you're sitting next to 2 people that are like, we're going to exterminate you? What's the advantage of you can't then?
You can't.
Yeah, but how would the other trade thing work?
Because you can trade without being next to each other.
Yeah, you can trade whenever you want.
Yeah, okay. When is that going to happen?
I don't know. If you need someone to do something for you.
Most of the time you want to make trade contracts with people who are on the opposite side of galaxy from you, because there's like, Tom is on the other end of the entire goddamn galaxy. We're probably not going to be fighting.
I know, but it's just, and then you give a 1 for 1, but you lose 1 anyway just because of trade. So I've just traded, but I get nothing anyway, and it's just...
You can tech up so that doesn't happen.
You can take a non-warlike race and have a better, like...
He'll never do it.
I know.
He'll never do it.
Last game I played as the goblins, the peacefulest race.
No. By no means. How many action cards did you steal by the end of that game?
I got that tech very late.
The goblins are the tribes of Israel, for the record.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
The Gereblians. The spies, the scumbags.
I vehemently disagree with you on this, and I think trade in TI4 is better than it was in TI3. I've always not liked TI3 trade.
I think it makes sense.
The trade contracts are shit. They give you nothing. It's complicated, and I don't like it.
I think TI4 trade makes sense on the face of it. But the fact is that it's not just Tom that doesn't get it. Like I said, every time, every single
Normal
time,
people don't understand it.
Like as we already, when we're playing TI, I find myself often being the fucking kindergarten teacher, being like, "Hello, it is now time for the status phase. I will now go through the steps on the thing that is actually also in front of you." And even then, I'm like, "Okay, now refresh planets, then return your action cards, blah blah blah." No action cards, strategy cards. Now like refresh planets, and then. Even then, someone will inevitably. 3 minutes, like 3 minutes into our starting the next action phase, someone will go, "Oh, you didn't tell me to refresh my planets." I'm like,
this is usually after just having a sip of beer.
Just one, yeah.
Just the one.
But like the same thing being like, whenever trading is happening, I am just gonna be standing there being like, "Yes, you have your bananas. The other person has your carrots," and like. Being first tier,
neighbors.
Yeah. Exactly.
Is it on one of your turns?
This is true
in
in TI4.
But you don't need to. You also don't need to like you can't trade carrots with anyone in the universe. But you like money, you can just send out, right?
No.
Yeah, you can.
No. You have to be neighbors unless you're Hakan.
Yeah.
But didn't we also house rule that in the last game and say that money can change hands, and you could basically do this bribery thing because.
Well, I would always vote for that because I find that more...
Because I agree that that's dumb because you can then bribe people in the voting phase, which just happens in the end of the thing. Because that, you can bribe there everyone.
Yes.
But I think that last at least one or two against we changed it.
Because
so
it was
that
so
money
dumb.
can change hands all the time, but commodities can't because you have to
like
be
I
next
just
to it,
think
because that's the trade part.
But like I think this is actually the thing. I think TI4 has more of the things that have require me to be the like first tier support.
Just to read through it.
I do think like the exploration mechanic is one thing where you have to like someone needs to be dealing with those extra cards and like have you done it? Do you have things that require you to like do different things? Mechs also or something like it is just something that makes it more difficult to play, and especially for new people, and it's even for people who have played it a lot. If you're drunk, it gets to a place where someone is the nanny.
I agree, but both of those are expansion stuff and not base game TI4, which I think is better.
The trade is still one of those things, but
trade is one of the things that's different.
But agree to disagree.
But I don't hate the trade as much as Tom hates the trade.
I just like a simple kind of. I think it's simple. Like, oh, here's a card. Do I get money? Yes or no? Now I have money, and I can spend this money with anyone whenever I want. It's kind of like I like that kind of as a currency.
Yeah,
because it's just then another thing of like, okay, so if I want to bribe you on your turn, I need to get commodities this turn so I can get a ship to you so we can trade through. I'm like, I just want to give you 2 money to do a thing.
Yeah, but if you don't have 2 money, you can't give them 2 money.
Yeah, but then I have to put myself in a place where I have to be in a place where I have money, and it has to be on one of our turns, and we have to have an adjacent ship to even give you money.
Especially in the turn order thing is just like I do agree with on the commodities thing.
It's more gamey, right? Like if you actually want a clean cut, here are the timing windows of everything that happens in a game. I get it.
That's not how we play TI.
Well, no, we play a very messy game, I would say. But it's just one of those. I don't know. It just strikes me as something that I need to like. Oh god. So I need to divert whatever I'm looking at or doing to work out, okay, so I've got this money and I've got to get it to you somehow. I don't know. It's just...
It's weird because I've never had this, like... It's never taken me out of the game to think about the commodities and doing stuff. I'm like... I'm surprised to hear this because it's never been even like a second thought for me to
I know people like it. Like, everyone's like, oh, this is such an improvement. I'm like, I don't. Well, I don't see it. I don't see it. Not for me. It's just
agree
something
to disagree on this one.
Okay.
Right. Other points that you think they made
this
worse.
was the first bugbear.
Yeah, so I've got another hot take. I don't like politics or how it's done in TI4. So in base game, the politics strategy card triggers agenda votes. So you vote on things, and it's in the space year. So you vote with the planets that you have left at that time. In TI4, you only do votes at the end of the space year when everyone has all their planets. So I would say that it's more tactical in TI3 to when you play the political card, because then, okay, so I'm just going to wait for you to spend all your money, like spending planets, turning face down, you don't have votes. And then when I've got the most votes, that's when I play my political card.
Yeah.
Rather than TI4, it's like, how many planets have you landed on with votes? You've won. It's like, okay, great.
This is true, yeah.
I find that less interesting. Like, so the whole strategy is have planets near you with votes.
Yeah.
There is no strategy.
Whereas with TI3, you can just you can time it so that other people don't have them. You can play an action card that like exhausts them. You can.
There's things that you can do to, even if you don't control the most influence, and you can warp it that you now, because you've picked your moment, you are now controlling the... And the
changes that happened due to the political cards take effect immediately.
Yes.
So you can, if you have a political card that will fuck someone over right now, it will fuck them over right now, because things might still change by the time the politics phase rolls out.
Yeah, and then it's risk reward, because the longer you wait, I think the secondary of politics is you can refresh planets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you wait longer and you might win the vote, but then other people can get their money and votes back for other things. So I like that. I think in TI4 it's like, well, okay, so if you're more warlike, then you just
It's not
win.
politics that like lets you refresh planets.
This is in TI4.
This is TI3 based game strategy cards.
Oh right, no, we've never played with those strategy cards.
The other one is shit. You're correct. Sorry.
Damn it.
These are Shattered Empire. Empire strategy cards. That is the correct one.
Okay. Anyway, But in TI4, you do like 2 votes at the end, where so there's a little bit of thinking about, do I like care about the first one? What if the second one is worse? And like, I really need to. And I think TI4 also there's points in voting. We vote. There's like 2 votes. So there's the first thing and then the second thing. You vote on like 2 agendas in a row. So you might want to save your votes because the second one might be more important or something. It doesn't mitigate it completely, but also I think there's some cards that give you points. There are these rider cards, and I think even some like secret agendas that have to do with voting.
Yeah, like
one of them
is insane.
Is really bad. You have to be the one that everyone votes for. Like they're agendas where it's like, so some we vote for who loses a point, who gains a point, and you have to be the one they vote. I've had that agenda and it's impossible.
I have an opinion about the like having 2 like political cards to vote on as well.
Okay.
I think having just one makes, because we tend to like because we are very shouty. When we have the political card and we do the voting on it, it is very like we get really into it. But then we can do one of those properly in a row. The second one is always going to be a bit of a like one of the 2 is always going to be a bit of a wash.
I think the thing that they're just both top decked is something that it's annoying. It's like, well, okay, I'm going to play this really tactically. Well, no, I'm not. I just have all my planets, and if we flip the first one, I don't care. I'm not going to vote on it. And then whatever the second one is, I'll vote everything on. Something. Like there's less drama and there's less tactics.
I agree with you on that, and I think that's a thing that is worse in 4 than 3. Like because the tactics around doing politics is just better.
I just kind of like it.
I'm saying that, but I think that it would be rare that I would go. Almost like anyone would actually wait. Like have such a good political card that they will like play their turn to wait to get to play that card and then to get to vote for something and then they want to push it through with their planets.
I'm not saying you have to. It's just nice to have a tactical option of it. Is the thing that you could do it.
It is an option, but I think it's an option that is very rarely taken anyway. So I think it is TI3. Its political system is better, but it's not like
huge thing.
Yeah, I disagree. It's better, but it's not like that big of a thing.
I disagree because I think I do not remember a single really interesting or important vote we've had in TI4. Whereas in TI3 we've had some really like game-changing, like memorable conversations and fights.
I'm still salty about that War Sun one. I'm going to be taking that one to my grave.
Yeah, but I got fucked.
That one
few games afterwards that worse than you.
Yeah,
I just lost the game due to that.
That was pretty brutal, actually.
Yes.
That was pretty brutal.
And they're very interesting. I think there was one time when the vote resulted in us being like, okay, you pick someone else's action, like strategy card. That was so much fun, and I wish we would do that as a like base game thing every now and then.
Do you remember the law that switched resources and influences on every planet?
I don't remember that.
That was that was like, oh Jesus!
Having Megathor Rex became
it was the greatest production planet in the world.
But this is my point. Like I think the votes, like the conversation around the votes, is more interesting. The tactics around the votes are more interesting, and the votes themselves are more interesting.
Yeah, and you're in a position where if you spent all your planets, like, oh god, I've got to do some diplomacy right now because I need this vote to go my way.
I agree. It's a good point.
But I think it's also a bigger deal than
better in TI3 than it is in 4.
I think it's a bigger part of the game than you let it on. Like I think it is.
Okay, maybe.
It's again, it depends on what comes out. It's very hit and miss because the decks in TI3 are huge.
Yeah,
they're a bit more tailored in TI4. Like they're still, I guess they're pretty punchy. Again, I can't remember any votes in TI4 that
were actually that
really
interesting.
I feel like a lot of them are like give this planet plus
more
things
something,
or give this person skills or powers or something like that.
Because
I don't think they're as like nerfy or like you can have
not
X many ships.
But because you don't decide, you don't choose them the same way. You like we get like an unfiltered pack of political cards, whereas in TI3 you can use the ones you don't give a shit about, and then
I'll keep that one for a rainy day just in case.
We do oftentimes in the TI3 though just spend our political cards as money, and then we end up top decking anyway. Like that is like in the last game we played, I think we top decked all but one.
But it depends on what comes out because I had there was some fantastic one. If I was playing a different race, yes, I would there would be some fantastic where I'd be like, I'm keeping that. I know exactly if I was this guy, I would keep that.
Okay.
But yeah, just none of them that I picked up basically would have helped. I think
you
my particular thing. Yeah. So it's like, spend it. Rather have like money. something else.
I agree, and it adds something. It adds a lot. You have convinced me that it's a bigger part of the game than maybe I give it credit, but also adds to the game in the parts of like the shouty parts or like the intriguey parts where you have to discuss with people more than like adding a game mechanic where I have a power that you don't have that I can press a button and then do.
Actually, 1 point. When was the last time you did Space Balcony in TI4?
Oh, in TI4. I think I would have tried it like last time, but I was just so out of it. I couldn't do it. Like I was just being like I had nothing.
And for the listeners, Space Balcony is when you...
That'd be a good thing.
It's the ultimate diplomatic tool that would solve all the world's problems.
Okay. Space Balcony is when you go onto the balcony to have a conversation privately. It used to be the Space Kitchen when we played at Tom's previous apartment, because then there wasn't a balcony and there was a kitchen that was separate. Recently we've been playing at Mikko's, who has an open kitchen, like living room situation, so it's the Space Balcony. I
remember it being quite cold, so you got to have quick chats on the Space Balcony if it's -10.
Yeah.
At your, like, if you were to play at your current place, it would be the Space Solar Room, whatever.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Maybe Space Bedroom. I think we were just
I think we went space bedrooming.
Yeah.
Which sounds worse than it is.
Yeah.
Yes. But like my point is that like in TI4 we just don't do Space Balcony because
I do remember playing TI4. This goes against everything I've said so far, so I'm contradicting.
Nothing could be trusted out of your mouth.
I'm contradicting myself a lot here, but I remember several games in TI4, even in the base games, not with the expansion, where I just felt like I had nothing to do.
Yes.
Where I just felt I don't know why.
Yeah.
I felt like I was like, well, I guess I do nothing. I don't know what to do, but I can't pinpoint what changed to make me feel like I have nothing to do now.
When I was saying earlier that I think TI4 games are quicker because we gave up earlier, and I think that's it. Every game someone has checked out, and that doesn't happen in TI3 because it is weird enough and swinging it.
I think there's definitely been games in TI4 where you just know a few rounds in, it's like I'm out of this. Yeah. There's nothing I can, like, literally, I'm just not just my usual whinging to people, but like legitimately, there's nothing. I cannot get anywhere. I cannot fight anyone. Well, I can, but it would just be for the sake of doing it.
And you keep doing it just because you're here and you're going to be here for the next 16 hours, and the other option is just drink yourself to death.
But it's interesting.
It's always a finish option.
Yes.
So we've all had that experience, but what is it that makes that? Like, why is that happens in TI4?
I think it's a combination of there being more resources but unevenly distributed, the command token economy being more drippy, there being too many things to keep track of, and there being just so many mechanics around like exploration that if you are between two warlike races, or if you're stuck in a place, you just don't have any other way to do it. And then this combined with the political action thing being so much less impactful, you just have way fewer things that you can swing your way.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to the points that are open to you is very different in TI4. It's a lot more, the points are the objectives, well, obviously, like public objectives, and then you can get like 3 points for secrets, but some secrets are also impossible. Whereas I think the way we set up TI3, like we play with artifacts, the secret objectives are chunky. You could always go for a real Hail Mary with a secret objective. Like, your chances of getting it are maybe slim, but at least it gives you something. It's like, well, I'll just get a mega army and point it at someone else's home system, I guess. And then if we play with like preliminary objectives, so there's points on the board, there's public objectives, there's chunky secret objectives, there's preliminary objectives. So there's a lot of points that technically you could get without having to read this one card and do this one thing for 2 points. It's like, well, I can't do that.
I think that's a good point, and something I wanted to bring up is that I think whoever wins TI4, the one who wins it is basically who can find that like 1 or 2 points that no one else can do.
Yeah.
That no one, like the points that I can get that you can't get, like getting Megatol, or getting first when you get a point in TI4, or getting the one time I got the action card of the law or the something where I could draw an extra secret agenda, secret objective, which meant that I could get a point that none of you could get. And I think in TI4 that's how you win, because everyone's going to do their secrets are easier, everyone's going to do them. The other ones come out like slowly, and then you're going to be able to do them, and everyone can do them. So you need something that no one else can do, and usually the person who does that just wins.
That's true.
But there's definitely points where objectives come out and like I can't do that.
Yeah,
it's like that's it. That's
except for Hakan, because the late games are always they either have a bunch of tech, have a million planets, or spend
A fuck ton of money.
like 20 resources, which and
Or
like,
be an
and one
experimental.
of those three is something Hakan can always do.
Yeah, but like I think that this is true. Like in TI, like in TI4, it's either like everyone can do them or no one can do them, and then but yeah, we have a more interesting game because there are the artifacts, there are things that you can just.
I just kind of I like having more points than you need. Because, okay, maybe I'm not going to get that level of influence. Okay, I'm not a trading race, so I cannot do the trade good objective. But what I can do is fight you and take this planet for a point. And then that, at least it gives you kind of...
It makes it so much more interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you things. But people, I think on the other hand, I can see people not liking that because you should be doing the public objectives. You should have strategies that people can see coming as kind of like a tactical play. But I don't know, me personally, I like kind of the more...
And you could, if you were to play more of like the bigger ship, like the bigger fleet diplomacy, then that would also maybe be a thing. But because we tend to we can build huge fleets and then we just sit on them for a while, I guess.
Well, yeah.
Until something happens. But then I don't think that...
It depends. Yeah, it depends.
But, and then sometimes you just don't have a big fleet because you do it otherwise. But I do think that as well, like, I think TI4 more requires you to build a big fleet.
Yes and no. I guess it depends. I think speed in TI4 is more.
And to be like when I was playing
important.
Imperium, like just having, I think I just had like the small ships everywhere.
Yeah.
But even then, I could have just pulled them all to someone. But yeah, it's I just generally think TI4 is more streamlined to a fault, where it is. Because it is streamlined, there are correct ways to do things and there are correct ways to play things and there are fewer ways to win by doing weird shit.
It's more gamey because I agree with that the difference in TI4 is not that I don't agree that you always have to have a bigger or the bigger fleet thing. I think everyone gets bigger fleets because there's more resources, but I think speed is really, really key, and it's like to win or to do well you have to score points every round, and ideally do like, if not the secret in the first round, then doing like a secret every round after that and a public to be like up with it.
I don't think that's ever happened to me.
Like,
I think I always have the best laid plans, but I'm like, no, my precious ships.
Yeah, because you need to do like you need to keep up and just keep scoring every round, because otherwise you just end up
TI4 is the better game. TI3 is the better experience. It is like TI4 is a game that we play together and with shouting. TI3 is us shouting over the game.
Yeah, and it also has like a 20-page FAQ. There's a lot of jank in it, but I think it flies because we've molded it into something that's perfect for us, that's over the table, that is thinky, but generally speaking, you have enough idea of what's going on, what people can do.
You can play it after drinking for 10 hours.
Yeah, pretty much. Yes. And you don't have to play it perfectly. It's not like, I should have got that green skip technology so
3 rounds ago. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, what tech did I buy? Oh, did I need Sarween tools?
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not at this point.
But yeah, I think the end result of this is that I think I missed TI3. I'm kind of sad I missed the game that you guys played. At the same time, I do think we should give base game TI4 a try again.
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it.
I'm very up for that.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
Because I think I'm out of us three seeming like the most positive about TI4, just base game still. I feel like we're all against Prophecy of Kings, or not against it, but feeling like it adds things to the game that we don't see as valuable, and we don't value. Because, I mean, other people who love parts of that, like absolutely love Prophecy of Kings, because it adds things they like about the game. They have even more special powers, even more things to do, and even more blow, which is like, that's what they want, they love it, and that's fantastic. If you like it, excellent. Buy it, play it as much as you want. But I don't think, for me, it doesn't add what I want. I thought it did, but it didn't. And then I think it's the same for you guys.
We were super hyped about the new
we
races.
Were
and
so
the races
hyped.
waited for Prophecy of Kings so much, and when it came, we were super excited about it. But
I love the new races. Like, it's the fact that the new races come with the different, like, new elements that I don't like. New heroes, new something. I know you can't separate them, but if they just released another TI4 expansion, which was just 20 new races.
I would just take Empyrean in TI3.
Could we homebrew
Empyrean in TI3?
Oh my god, how the hell?
I don't know, but it would be. I would like to.
You can get custom stuff
can try,
printed.
But a big part of Empyrean is the like exploration tokens in empty space.
I think a lot of your hero stuff is like go into empty space and find stuff.
Yeah, but I don't think that was the point. Like, I didn't find, like, for me, that was the excuse I used
to stab people.
To take over
It
the
is
entirety of the empty space.
So you would say you would play Empyrean for the when I assume
The mobility shit.
for the two things you would do it for letting other people go through you and being able to boost other people's movements
Yes.
that are next to you. Those are the powers you kind of want.
Yes.
I think those could work in TI. There's not as much movement in TI. I think TI4 gets more ships moving quicker. But
that's why it would also
just
be such a
throwing it in for one game and seeing what
Yes.
happens with the homebrew thing would be exciting.
Yes.
Could be interesting. All right. Does anyone have any final thoughts, final take-home hot takes about TI3, TI4? Anything they're still salty about?
I mean,
Let's not.
So many.
Just started a real therapy session.
Yeah.
Maybe not. I just want to say in the last game, War Suns came for me and no one helped. Literally no one. I was on my own. There's a little squishy Jolnar.
I would have helped you, but I went for my own game, and there was basically a coin flip of whether I would have won that game.
Who won the game?
Jonas.
Of course.
He played he had the War Suns, but basically we made it to the end of the agenda deck or the points deck. What are they called? Objective deck.
Yeah.
Objective
deck. We made it to the end. There was 3 cards left, and in the bottom 2 was the one that instantly ends the game. And I got to look at it when there was 3 there. So I got to get the second last and third last,
Okay.
and neither of them was the ends the game. And if he would have been there, then that would have come out, and then I would have won because I had the
Okay.
most points.
Yeah.
But then I couldn't hold on for one more turn because Jonas had all the extra points for planets.
He was holding all the planets.
He was
no one was
he
going
was War
for
Sun race, so he plonked War Suns on points planets, which is well, who's going to take that?
Yeah, but then he left him. He left him for 4 hours, and no one went for him. I was like, please.
But also,
please, he's covering for my home system. Please, just while he's away,
and he was playing
take something from him.
He was playing for the first time, but he familiarized himself with the game. But he was playing next to 2 people who had also never played the game. Which, if you're doing that, then it's so easy for someone to be left alone because there needs to be these checks and balances. Like you said, every time someone wins because a neighbor didn't really keep them in check that much for whatever reason. They didn't know what to do. They were also going for the win in a different way. They tried to game them. Maybe they thought they would win, but they didn't.
Obviously, we love the game.
Hopefully that comes across beyond my salt in every story. But I do love it. I do love it. Again, it's a hell of a day.
And
it wrecks me for the next week.
But
I do love it.
It's a day every time we book it, I look forward to it a lot.
Yeah.
And it's just an excellent game.
It's an experience. All right. Well, with that, we'll move on. Okay, so now we'll move on to the patented RPG section of the show, which is what everyone tunes into. I don't. I skip it. I skip it every week. I care not for it. No, I'm kidding, obviously. So we're RPG guys. We're RPG players, right? We play, we DM, we prep some games. I've been in some of them. And people want to know, do we have any hot takes, hot tips on what we see as an adequate level of prep? Where do we go? What do our minds think of when we're prepping an adventure?
Something kind of struck me last time when we talked about this, because Simon kept asking me about, referring back to, writing a story in your head. Like, the DM writes a story in their head and then runs that game. And for me, at least, that's not at all how I prep games and not at all how I conceptualize games. And I kind of wanted to hear about, how you two figure out how you guys think about the stories in your games. How do you prepare them as stories, or do you prepare them as... For me, it's more of I lay the scene and the story happens, but is there a story that you're writing that you're, bringing your game, players along to?
Definitely, for me, because I asked like that, I've run a few things that are just ready-made one-shots that I didn't have to plan. Just someone else just made it, and that's it. So I think based on that, reading those kind of things, I've also just planned almost writing it as a one-shot that I would find online, where this is the setting, this is what they can do, and this is sort of where they will eventually end up. But doing it like that, because that's the only way that I can sort of frame it in any way. Because I'm not very experienced with RPGs and definitely not running them. I'm afraid of leaving it too open-ended to just getting to stuff where I have no idea, and then mid-game I have to start looking up stuff of I don't even know if that thing exists, and then I have to make something up, which happens anyway. I've noticed when you do stuff, even when I try to have it sort of planned, either because I fuck it up and panic and then invent something that I was like, oh shit, shouldn't have said that, and then we just go with it. Or then because they do something unexpected, which I think is really good. But for me, at least, I think of like, okay, I almost plan of like, they're going to start here, then they're going to go here, they can talk to these people, eventually it will lead them into the boss fight or whatever happens, and then it like ends there.
Yeah.
To try to keep it sort of small. Because I've never tried to design like a bigger campaign or anything like that.
Thing.
Like just sort of short
I was going to say, because I think that can impact kind of how things are prepped, right? Like if you are going for more of a sort of giant arc, I guess depending if you want more of a linear adventure, you have to have more signposts along the way if you were prepping that kind of thing. Obviously not every single detail, but when I've been going for not necessarily one shots, but these kind of like short arc things, even if they're like pre-written adventures, I'll try and take out sort of the bare bones, bare minimum kind of beats. There's always kind of beats that you want something to, something needs to happen, I guess, during every session, right? And as long as I've got the players that are on my side, as in like the NPCs, as long as I kind of know what they're about and what their initial interaction with the players would be, depending, like in a normal scenario, because players will usually meet people in very weird situations, like setting fire to their garden and then breaking into their house and then shooting them. Like, I'm not going to name any names, but Christ.
We thought the mansion estate you described was a lot more opulent than it ended up being. And then the shot was accidental because we just wanted to shoot him in the leg, but the other player rolled phenomenally badly and just ended up shooting this man to death.
I think he was unconscious and then you just left him for dead.
Well, but he had taken such a hit that he was rendered unconscious, and then we looked at us playing homeless bums, be like, do we have any medical skills? No. So okay, we can roll for it, but it's 1 in 100 where we could save this. We're like, you know what?
He's probably fine. It's too late for him. So if we're sort of bearing down more on short,
let's go with short games, right? because Simon hasn't run any longer campaigns. I've only run one shots that are within the bigger campaign that I play in.
Yeah. So I've tried to I've done like the basic kind of D&D ones, like Lost Mine of Fandelver that sort of bloomed out of stuff, and then I've started Curse of Strahd, which was a nightmare to prep just because of how sandboxy it is.
No.
And I wanted to keep it sandboxy. Like, I don't mind linear adventures and that sort of expected trajectory. Like, you could do something strange, but then something else will happen at the end.
Yeah.
And my approach now for even short little campaigns is kind of my guiding principle is like, what will happen if the heroes do nothing?
This is such an interesting, because this is such a like very specific way of like attacking the problem that I never have.
Is it because you have players that actively seek out mysteries and do things?
Because in West Marches they are in this place because they have decided to come to this place.
Right. So this is my first experience with GMing or DMing was all my players run away from everything.
Yes.
Right. So I had to very quickly ascertain that having a big bad or having something in a scenario was not enough.
Yeah, something that will chase you down or box you in. This is what you had to do.
I had to basically backtrack and improvise of like, oh, they don't care about mystery. It's just very, and this is kind of based, I guess, around the setting. So this was my first kind of DMA experience was in Deadlands, which is sort of in the weird West, right? So it's the old West, but there's demons, there's things coming through from the other side. So it's primarily kind of horror, frontier kind of themed.
And you were going quite full on the horror.
Yeah, pretty much. But it's not, I wouldn't say it's like full Call of Cthulhu, which is something we've done since then. As in, like, the players have powers. You can still pack a punch.
Yeah,
right?
we were quite powerful, and we could have done a lot of things, but I think we had a lot of people who were playing their first RPG and were playing very specific kinds of characters.
Yeah, and I was expecting more of, because if you go into D&D, right, like it's a heroic fantasy, right? You're playing heroes usually. I mean, you can be a dickhead, all right, fair enough. But like the game is kind of set up for your wandering band of adventurers who either do quests or do things generally on the side of good, right? That's kind of set up. And you have eye-watering powers, like incredible powers to do that. So I think that needs to factor into, I guess, the setup of an adventure. You assume that an adventuring party with eye-watering powers that generally side with good will go and help people.
Or are like motivated by money or something else, like have a reason to be there.
Yes, yeah.
Because in our campaign, it's not obviously everyone is kind of a good person, and like.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying like.
Yeah, but
good
kind of
intentions,
but kind of like has a moral character to them.
Mm.
Yeah, but even then, there is like that is the power for me of West Marches, that you have a reason you have gone to this place, and then also having for the group that we are in, it's also that like, okay, someone in this group has a reason to be here, and because it is a tight group, knit group of friends, they have a reason to be there for each other. And that was also something that we didn't have in that game that we were playing.
Yeah.
It was like we started from meeting at a bar, like meeting at a tavern, which can work, but it just combined with not having nailed down what our characters cared about.
Yeah, which makes it, I guess, kind of more difficult for more esoteric kind of games. I guess you need to kind of alter it for that. So that was very tangential, but like just to pop back onto prep. So for those original Deadlands kind of scenarios, I was very focused on, when I was prepping, it was just kind of the setting, the scene, and then usually the big bad. There's a big bad, and that is the problem that needs to be solved. Either you're trapped in a place, or hopefully you help a town with their big bad problem. With more D&D stuff, like the very tropey story that I took you, Simon, and like a few people through, very, very D&D, like starting with a goblin fight, ending with a dragon fight, like just trying to hit every single trope.
Yeah.
The plan for that was basically just kind of locations and things along the way. My prep notes for that were basically just monster stats. And then wherever you went, I was going to throw monsters or encounters, because again, it's still heroic. You still want to fight things, because if you're a 10th level cleric, sooner or later you're going to throw lightning at something. So that was the prep for that. And then since I've been getting into more Call of Cthulhu, and I really, really want to try this Delta Green kind of thing, this is where my sort of design comes back to, because they're not heroic fantasy. There is a situation, right? Your characters are coming into a situation, either invited or just through dumb luck. And then it's the way that I'm technically approaching that is like, okay, if they did nothing, what would happen? Yeah. And usually it's bad. Like the cult wins, the sacrifice happens, people die if you don't do something. And that for me is kind of opened a lot more avenues of, okay, so I don't need the players to go here. I don't need them to speak to this one person and get this one piece of advice, because wherever you go, sooner or later you're going to cross paths with what the other guys need to do, right? Like the other side of the equation. So for a lot of the Call of Cthulhu one especially was, well, I have a parallel timeline for what you guys are doing, what my guys are doing. And wherever you go, there's going to be sort of overlap depending on what you kind of did. I'll admit that only kind of works in a short term, well, over a short period of time kind of adventure, and obviously in a short, small geographical location. But hopefully it worked, because I've run that twice now, and both groups did things really weird. Like, no two player groups will do the same things, but they were talking to different people and following different clues. And it didn't feel out of hand, because
you knew what was going to get them back on track, or what would like.
Yeah, they were always going to find something or someone. Like everyone had a piece of the puzzle, right?
And we did royally screw that one up, and Tom helped us get back on track after like screwing up multiple points.
What was that?
We were supposed to get leads from, and then we just didn't do it.
Well, no,
and then one guy just got himself killed because he just role played too hard.
Oh wow, yeah, no, I've never seen someone role play themselves to death. It's like he was captured by a mobster. Well, he was captured by the corrupt police, thrown into jail, and then a corrupt mobster came to interview him. It's like, you don't know anything about my boss, do you? And he was like, yes, I know everything about your boss, and I'll tell everyone about him. It's like,
oh my god,
oh wow, he's dead. He's
okay.
dead. Like, I gave him chances to like do other things, but I was like, I mean, to be fair, he did have a guess at what their motives were, but they were completely wrong. So fair play. I mean, he did. Invested in the role play, which is
correct. I respect that.
Yeah, me too. I was like, well, I think he was fine with it. I was like, okay, that was a brave choice. He went all in.
Right.
But I like this idea, or this sort of framing of it, of thinking of stuff's going to happen and like what happens if they do nothing. Because I think that's maybe I've run, well, Cyberpunk was the last thing I ran, and also there you have powers, but like mega powerful. Like you have things you can do, but the other guys also have.
I have a car.
Yeah,
that was my power.
But the other guys also have things that could just kill you instantly. And then it's not this sort of necessarily a heroic thing where like, oh, there's a big bad over there, then people could just go. I don't care.
It's not my job.
I don't care about that.
It's
big
super
bad.
brutal.
I want to do something else, and then you have to be like, because I've been the guy who's been like, I don't care about that. So then
you're like, whatever. Oh, this is what it feels like.
So this is what it feels like, exactly. So then trying to engineer situations where like not eventually like forcing them to do something, but like eventually they will end up there, but through different ways depending on what they sort of did, which was what I was trying to think for the cyberpunk. Because the cyberpunk thing was one that I just almost made up myself. Like there were I'd listened to a YouTube video where they did kind of this, and I stole a lot from there. And then I stole a lot from other places, and then just made my own thing.
I'm going to assume we didn't do what those guys did.
No. Completely different. But that, again, but also because I screwed up a thing royally, where like things happened and I didn't expect what that were going to happen, and then I just winged it a little bit from there. And I think that winging it kind of
I think at some
the
point,
wrong way, but
I don't know. But you always, when you're DMing, at some point you need to wing it. Like a sort of a rule of thumb: prep as much up to the point that you don't mind improvising everything else. Like if you're prepped up to the point where you go, okay, now I can, if they throw something at me, I feel like I could just make stuff up, or I could shift things around. Like as long as you prep up to that point, I think you're fine. I don't think there's any kind of hard and fast rule other than do something.
Because this is my point as well, because I don't have this experience of having to color the players, because, well, except I did try to run the like Genesis one shot to you guys, and that kind of like I kept it stayed on track. They just kind of collapsed on itself and never was finished. But it's like that was the only time I've ran it for people who weren't like cooperative in that sense. Whereas with like playing with the Chasers, which is the main campaign I play with, it's like people are there because they want to be there, and people are like generally the social contract of this is how we play this game is a lot stronger.
Well, it's again because it's been going for years.
Yes, and like because the people are specific kinds of people who have been handpicked to play in this campaign or whatever.
Yeah.
But
I just want to say this is D&D.
This is the fifth edition, yes.
Yeah.
The first game I ran, I was super like I wanted to run it because first of all it was based on a book that I had been super into, and it was just like it struck me the aesthetic of it and the story of it and the ambiance of it. And then I was super deep into the like lore of the one place I wanted to run it in, and I got the notes I made for it, and it's like 6 pages of like me figuring out these like underground cult that I have. I was doing math on would it make sense for how long they've been there. Like I was focusing on the place, like the way I didn't have a real storyline of anything that was happening. I just wanted to know this place I was bringing my players into. So that if they wanted to understand something, I would have a real reason for it. In hindsight, I went super too stupidly deep into this. Like I was just figuring out the logistics of living underground for 300 years and like figuring out which kinds of like vegetables can live under there.
So you basically wrote the Silmarillion about this very niche character.
Basically and like it had a vivid backstory to everything because I knew that place by like the back of my hand. And yet most of the things I really cared about, things I worried about the players caring about and worried about not knowing enough about, they did not ask. And yet I somehow forgot to completely plan, like I brought these people in this town, on this village, and I had an intricate love triangle between the blacksmith's apprentice and the baker's daughter, and like these the social dynamics of all of the
classic love triangle.
All of it, like it's like who is friends with whom, and like the social dynamics of the whole town.
Yeah.
But I forgot to put in a potion maker, and then had to.
That's fine. This is Phil, the potion maker.
Yes, I had to wing it, but I had a list of names that I I think I reskinned the brewer as a potion maker.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
it was also
is a brewer not a potion maker?
He ended up being both, and like it ended up working out. And I kind of went too deep in even the mystery of the story and everything, but it did work out. And then like I said, 6 pages of notes of like the lineage of the big bad evil guy and
Jesus
so you
Christ.
fully flush out the
this is the first one I ran.
lore
Yes,
of a thing.
that was the first one I ran. Then I have the notes for the most recent one I ran, which is half a page with 6 names and a picture of a bear.
This is more my speed, I think, of prep.
But the things I focused on the things I really cared about on top of like the lore of the place and the history of the place, and because I want to be able to understand, and this I think again ties to me not having a visual imagination, so I have to understand why things are there, so I can explain to you what they look like. Because for me it's not, I cannot just make it into my head. It has to be like the reason the walls to this cavern are smooth like this because the people who dug it like this, and the ground is smooth in these places and whatever.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty in-depth.
Yeah, but the things I had the hardest time with and things I got the most help with because I was running my first game, and this is the reason our game has so many DMs, is because we grow them organically in some ways. Because I could then ask like, okay, this person who is a DM that I have played with and who is not going to be playing in this game that I'm running, I went to them and asked like, hey, I have a problem with these things, and I said like, I'm good with the improvisation of the story and where people are going, but my problem is that I cannot improvise numbers for like damage. Like I have a hard time, like I can improvise something happening, but I am uncertain about being able to say that this is a reasonable amount of damage that this new enemy that I just pulled out of my hat does, or like something happening. Okay, and he gave me a list, like a growing scale of 2d6 is something like I have it still because I refer back to it.
Yeah, but it is, I mean, they're always useful, the kind of damage tables of like how catastrophic the damage is.
Yeah.
But I basically look at like the back of the book where there's like a bunch of examples of different enemies. So I just pick like how hard do I think this enemy should be. I take their stats and then I just call it, instead of calling it like a security already. It is now whatever I want, but
this
I just copy the stats of this thing.
Especially for D&D, that works for a lot of
but doesn't really work for our system because the people we often start games at level 10 and like level 6 and you go to level 10 and the power, like people are very powerful. Like we have to really homebrew monsters to be a challenge for this group.
Okay, yeah. I mean, obviously in those cases it's different.
So how much of when you're doing prep, whether or not like this has changed since that first thing then, so how much do you devote to the lore of whatever you're doing? How much do you put into the actual mechanics of the scenario? Like if it is picking enemies, if it is that. And then how much is kind of prepping the more ambience, like more different to the lore, but like the setting, the people, the places.
I feel like for me, 99% of my prep is people, or like sort of like where areas, if they go here, what is here?
Yeah.
And who is here?
Who is here? Yeah. What is their name? What would they say if they talk to them? And then like they're gonna show, but they could show up in a blazing car, followed by police, or just show up.
You have to know who you have to know your character, like the NPCs, and because then you know how they will react to any situation.
Yeah. So like for me, like 99% is just thinking about, okay, so the story is gonna be something. Would they go here? They're going to go to this club. Who's going to be here? Random people, but these are the important people. How would they react? Something like this. And that is most of my enemies is like, okay, if they end up in a fight, I just take some stats and be like, okay, this is what you're fighting.
Yeah. I don't know if this is a hot tip or very reductive, but whenever I have kind of a sandboxy, if it's like a little town or something where they're going to bump into certain people at certain places, list of names, and then next to the name basically one kind of characteristic from which everything else is derived. So just to give you examples, when I was doing the Lost Mine of Fandelver, you go into this little Fandelver town, it's built in the ruins of something that was greater, blah 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 blah, thousands of years ago. But if they meet like the halfling orchard owner, she's homely and welcoming. So homely, welcoming. Every interaction, unless they really fuck up, is going to be homely and welcoming. There's like an half-elf X like fighter or soldier in war who is brave but reluctant. Like he's reluctant. He's not, he'll help you, but he's not going to come with you. The mayor of the town is angry but fearful. Like he won't like you, but behind that it's because you're out of town, as you're in a small village and there's orcs in the hills, right? So as long as I have like the broadest initial kind of stroke on that, and assuming that the players don't like burst in and try and stab everyone before their first conversation, then it's kind of nice, at least for me, to have just a start-off point of what people are going to be sort of approaching the world with.
But this is so interesting to me because I think I kind of still avoid NPCs because I feel confident and comfortable with my world building, and I like making monsters and situations, but I am uncertain about my NPCs. And I realized I've never thought about my NPCs in those terms. Like, my NPCs do not exist in relation to how they will deal with the players. They are more like I have given them, like they are in this place and they are these people, and regardless of whether or not the players show up, these are their dynamics.
Mm.
And it's more like
I guess it depends on the situation. Like if the heroes are just passing through, then I don't know. If the players are in a particular strange place, I guess if it's an underground bone dungeon, maybe they're not expecting people to knock on the door and say hello.
Yeah, but this kind of, like, I just realized I haven't thought about it in those terms. Even when, like, the most recent game I did run and prep, it was basically like it was more supposed to be on one of these. We have some games that we call like guard games or like bar games, where it's like the point is that players get to role play and something happens while it's doing. It's like it's very low stakes, and it's kind of like more like not cinematic, but like. The game is the social interaction between the player characters, and the thing that is happening is just kind of like the reason they're there.
Yeah, the end of it isn't punching someone to death.
No. Yeah, and in this case, I really challenged myself because the game was you are going to shadow a bunch of teenagers, NPC teenagers, and make sure that they don't get into trouble. So it was a lot of me just like...
Keep them away from those drugs.
Yeah, like drunk, drinking and whatever, yeah. No, but like...
Spying on teenagers, the board game, coming soon.
But like, because that meant that I had to have like NPCs that were compelling enough that, because the point of the DM in that game is to, whenever there's a, like when the player characters stop having a conversation, like stop having something to do and interact with each other mostly, you throw something in there. And so I had like a rambunctious teenager named Ransom who ended up getting, like, she was basically a ADHD child that got her head stuck in a fucking like crook of a branch and shit like this. But the players were not involved. They were just like watching this from behind multiple trees.
I feel that person is a stand-in character for Ita.
I was thinking the same.
Yeah.
This was called out by the players.
Okay, right. It wasn't very well hidden.
No.
She was ADHD. I was like, oh, it's just you.
No, to be fair, it was actually based on one of my friends who also is
Sure. Let's
who
call
is
that
also
person
just like me.
Oh, yes.
Vita.
Yes.
The
Anyway.
classic my friend.
But yeah, in that game, even in that, like I didn't expect my players to have to interact with those teenagers, but if they had, I would have known how they would have interacted with them. But that was more because I knew the dynamics of that group and those people in relation, like those teenagers in relation to each other and the people of the keep, rather than... I think it would maybe make it easier for me if I had thought about it in the way you just described it.
I think as long... I mean, it's kind of arguing at the same thing from two different sides, right? Like, it's just giving yourself enough of a grain of sand to build something on, right? And just to hook something on initially, just so they're not like, hi, I'm guy number 1, and I live in a village, and I do village job. And like, oh, great, fantastic.
I guess it always comes down to what you're comfortable winging and what you're not comfortable winging.
Yeah,
and like,
I think, I agree. But it's always useful to at least have a list of names.
Yes.
I don't know.
The names are the big thing. I spend a lot of time figuring out names, usually. But like, also one of the things that I spend an insane amount of time on, that when I prep games, the way I prep them is that I care that because I know who the players are going to be. I care especially...
Always helps.
But like knowing the people and knowing the players and knowing the characters, and just I am preoccupied with making it an interesting game for all of those people, like trying to like give them something that they're into. Yeah. And I sometimes I misshoot with this a lot, because in the first game I had a barbarian and a fighter, and then a monk and I think sorcerer is what he was based on. But like I was focused initially in this bone dungeon in giving them something to fight. And then I realized quite quickly, after I had given them my bone work, like clockwork skeletons that just died because one of the guys had a big hammer, and I forgot that like undead, especially skeletons, are extra vulnerable to smashing damage.
Yeah, but I think that's good. Like, okay, you're a guy that's very good at this particular thing.
Yes.
All right, you're gonna maul whatever I can throw at you.
Yeah. And
that
was
nice.
It was super fun in the end, and then in the end it seemed that it was enough that there was something to bash, and then from then on it was more about the mystery and the social dynamics of the situation. But
so you've kind of mentioned this, but then how important is it, if you were planning something either from scratch or a pre-written thing, how much would you tweak it or how much would you want to know what your players are before the scenario?
I tend to want to know quite a lot, but then again, in the latest game that I played, I found out the name of one of the characters the night before and like didn't know their class until that day.
Like within reason.
Yeah.
But like the setup, knowing what we picked for the cyberpunk thing, even though that was only like kind of a short little kind of heist adventure. I can't remember now if you told us to not pick certain characters or to pick
no, I
certain
didn't.
things.
I didn't tell you to pick certain characters, but I did like want to know what characters you would be, because that helped me like one tie into the story of like why do you end up in this situation, because you guys ended up in a situation where you now owed someone money or owed someone things and you had to do certain things. So knowing what you guys are to get like some sort of hook of why you're here, why you would know each other, and then because I just find that more interesting than being like you guys are now in a place.
Yeah.
And now
I completely agree. And
I just like that little bit of like, oh, well, now you guys meet because you've been doing business dealings together, and you know Tom because Tom's your old driver, and now you need to get to here, so who would you call? And he could be like, I don't call Tom, I call my other friend, and I'm like,
fuck you.
Fine.
Yeah.
But that also allows you to give, so because Tom was playing a nomad who basically his power, he has a car that's tricked out with things. So then I put in more things, which like, oh, they have to drive to more places. They actually have to drive now through the combat zone where there's going to be more weird things being able to happen because one of them can drive. So in the final fights, I improvised a flying armor vehicle that just came in hoping that Tom would go for it and try to fly it because he should be able to do everything. And he did just that, and it was very, very funny.
Spoiler,
So-
I couldn't fly it for shit.
No, but
I was rolling absolute garbage. Absolute garbage, everything I tried to do.
And then the other characters also being good at like negotiating, being good at like techie things. So trying to put these kind of things in so that everyone gets something they're good at. Because if we just put you guys in like a massive like shooty fight and none of you guys are really that, then it's like, okay, well, I'm not really, because they come there wanting to the RPG, you're role playing something, you want to role play, you've chosen a character for a reason, and then if I give you no chances to do that, and if like Tom has a car and it's like, well, you're going to be climbing in this building for this entire time, you never get to see your car, and it's like, cool, why do I play a cool car guy?
I potentially have a very contentious thing to say then, that like the player party makeup or starting material is less important in heroic kind of D&D scenarios than it is if you were doing more tailored, kind of more horror, more story kind of things. Like, because generally, by general rules, D&D characters are very good at killing things in different ways. Oh, you summon fire, great. You have a big sword, generally. So it doesn't matter per se the mix if you're just putting on a, and I'm talking more about like tropey heroic adventures, not RPG odysseys. You know, if it's just role playing, you know, following some kids.
She's just role playing being a perv, which
this is clearly what I was doing.
Yeah, it's weird that came up in the game. But especially for like the Call of Cthulhu things, I think you could be whatever you want, but spoilers, the depression is on and you're homeless is kind of the setup. So whatever you bring to that is the starting point that I can then like filter things. The lens of society is you are viewed as scum. Is kind of that. And then it gets even more specific when I'm trying to run the Delta Green thing.
Is that the 1920s? We go for like an adventure somewhere in the jungle.
The Delta Green. No, the Delta Green is the one that he has the massive book for, where you're like.
What is the other one then that you were talking about? The one where we have to be like 1920s explorers.
Oh, that's still Call of Cthulhu.
Okay.
But that's more kind of pulpy. That's more sort of global adventure. Fighting down
Delta Green is the.
Delta Green is like the King in Yellow, and it's the setup is that you are agents in this shady government agency. Well, you're real people, but you're called up, like you were summoned in a very esoteric, mysterious way to do a job, right? Like, so if your expertise is, you know, you're a doctor.
But it gets more specific in terms of like planning the game for Delta Green because.
Yes, because you have to have a certain skill. You would only be called up because you have something for. So I'll tell you, like the setup for this is there's a missing girl in New York. She's an artist. She's left something weird behind. So why would... And then something's been flagged when the evidence was collected when the police were there. And now something's been flagged, and then Delta Green wants to send in boots on the ground, so people that potentially know New York, know the art scene, that would have something to, you know, like you go, you investigate, you tell us if something is otherworldly. Like, is it still mythosy?
Yeah. I see how that would go,
But it's quite grim, it's quite dark, but then it has to be a tale of, like, you don't have this, a missing girl in New York. Well, I am a 12th level cleric, and I shall summon the power of thunder and lightning to solve this crime. It's like, yeah, it's very kind of low level, and then you have to, it's a bit more kind of social edged, and then basically the whole thing is kind of role play, is because you're so brittle.
I am super intrigued by the, like, I've seen the book. I've leafed through the book during a party or something. Like, I was at your place.
That was after a few beers. I was looking at all these pictures.
Like, there are actual other people in there, and instead of both looking at the, like, massive book about the
they can sort themselves.
Yes.
So then we get to the age-old problem of scheduling, and actually getting that thing done, and the proverbial, well, is anyone free this week? Okay, let's try next week.
Yeah.
And then that forever.
Well, we're still trying to finish up a one-shot that we started a million years ago. Well, not a one-shot, but a little kind of little arc.
Still had a point I wanted to make about the prepping for specific characters and whatever. Because, like, the thing I mostly did with that, the thing I mostly do nowadays, because the thing I enjoy the most when I'm prepping a game is I make up monsters and I make up magic items. Like, those are the two things that I enjoy creating the most. Like, creating the ambience of the place, but, like, and especially because the characters that we play in our campaign are super powered, and there are some people that are basically an entire adventuring party by themselves. So you kind of have to figure out how to mitigate that, or how to make the situation still interesting for the entire group. So I plan quite heavily the way these, like, monsters work, and the way that they are still a challenge without being complete gerbstomps. If I still have, like, if one player ends up not being able to make it due to, like, scheduling things. Like, I might prep the game for this one guy who is completely OP, and then he gets corona, and then we are not going to, like, in this system, we're usually not going to cancel the game because one person couldn't make it, unless they were pivotal to the story.
Yeah.
And then, like, the magic items I mostly prep so that I have something interesting that is at least somewhat applicable to the people who are playing to get at the, like, to find somewhere. But, like...
So Tom, what do you like prepping the most?
If I can get, I guess, very broad strokes of not necessarily the lore. I don't get very deep on the lore. The lore for me is like, oh, you're in Velen, the city of shrines. It's been here for 1,000 years, and there's a lot of shrines. And then if you ask more questions, I will just pull things from my head. So I'm not too worried about the lore at that point. It's more, I guess, key characters and key things that need to happen. Not necessarily you have to go to a place to trigger something to happen. Just you need to... There are certain beats. So as long as there are... Okay, if it's D&D, you can have a fight at some point because that's primarily the setup of the game, especially if you're doing very tropey things. So, like, how early does that happen? You know, how brutal is it? Those kind of things I'll try and, like, at least sketch out. For other things, I guess the most important are... in D&D, the most important things, because I ran it for you guys, was just stat blocks. No, but, like, what do
you enjoy prepping?
I kind of enjoy... Again, it depends on the system. Like... What I enjoyed about the Deadlands one was trying to make a really creepy kind of build up to a fight, or at least a chase. Something would have been that. For D&D, I haven't done a lot of D&D stuff super recently, but I guess the prep would be more the NPCs and the monsters. Yeah. Because I think everyone pretty much has a very formed view of what a lot of D&D settings are, so I don't need to devote too much time. It's like, oh, it's an old castle. It's like... Tell me everything about the king who lived there. It's like, no one asks. No one really cares. It's an old castle in a wood.
Yeah, I think this is something I need to make a point about. Is like the reason I was so super into the lore, like the reason I have all of that shit about the first game was because I was just super into the setting and the place, and that's why my current character is the person who was the one person who was found in the cult's, like, cave. Like, because I was just...
You invested so long now.
Yes, it was just a labor of love because I loved the thing I was doing, but mostly I agree, it's not really relevant who the king was, who the castle was, like.
Well, I mean, if it comes up, it comes up. That's why I'm so surprised that when you've got so much lore that you don't rely on NPCs, because that seems to be the big trope of, like, oh, an NPC, let me tell you about the last 5,000 years.
Yeah, there was not a single living person in there except the big bad evil guy, so
that's incredibly brave then.
So it's just from, like, ambience and, like, feeling how the place is that they would, like, get sort of
Yeah,
Like, there's no way of really finding out about the lore. It's just that they can
I
find
had
about
to.
this place.
It wasn't relevant. Like it wasn't really even necessary for them to know about it. It was more just like in case something came up for me to be able to tell them why something is this way or what to improvise. It required for me to know the place.
I think for the D&D adventure, I used the exposition book pretty heavily. I was like, oh, you've got a book of ancient villain history. But you don't have time to read it now. It's in Draconic. It'll take time.
Yeah.
And then it was just like, well, if you think of a question in the future, I'll see if it's in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's so in the Call of Cthulhu, it's like, oh yeah, you've got these police files. You can read them later on. It's like if anything comes out, like you got to ask questions. Yeah, that could be in the file. Yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Give them. If people are interested, then you have an avenue to.
Yeah, and we use that quite a lot in the larger scheme of the like campaign. In that you have books that you kind of like end up finding out about.
All right then.
We have a few minutes.
We in the dying embers of this podcast. Does anyone have any top tips for prep? Any take-home messages?
I would like to recommend watching the Matt Colville running the game like YouTube things. They are excellent.
Yeah, he's so good. He's so good. A bit of old school sort of approach to D&D, which I kind of like.
And like not too formulaic. Yeah.
I don't know that person, so I'm
you should watch them.
I'm gonna check it out.
Just spend hours on YouTube.
I like Brennan Lee Mulligan and everything he does.
Oh, Dimension 20 is
like,
also
he doesn't.
good.
I don't think he does like guides or anything, which is like
he does like interviews. And
he's
stuff
an incredibly great DM.
His improv
stuff
is
he does.
insane.
He is
insane.
Yeah, but he's also like a comedian, actor, like whatever. Like he has stand-up routine. So I guess then you're also going to be pretty good at improvising.
Commanding a room. Yeah. No, he does it. Maybe we can talk about our favorite jibs and just fangirl in a future episode.
A fangirl episode.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, I'll thank you for listening, dear listener, and I'll thank the greatest board game minds again that were available when I threw them in this room from the street and asked them to talk about board games and RPGs. Thank you guys.
Is this technically our Christmas episode? If so, Merry Christmas. And Happy New Year to everyone.
Depends on the edit, but
and depends on when you listen to this.
Yeah, and Tom is definitely wearing the like Christmas sweater, so I think that is
true.
And you've got Christmas nails.
I'm sure that's come through on
Christmas nails
on the podcast. All these fashion things are just oozing into the mic.
Both of these are in the picture I took for the Instagram.
Okay,
and they're both very aesthetic.
Yeah. It is our theme. Isn't Scythe great? All right.
One more mention. The Pubbability score of TI is -1,000,000.
Oh, it's the worst. It's the worst pub game. No. Never take that to a pub. You'll die. All right. And on that bombshell, we'll say goodbye from the studios. All right. Bye.